Hello, everyone, and welcome to ET Energy World, the definitive portal for everything energy. Today, I'm joined by Hari Ravindran, Senior Vice President and Global Head KBR Technology Solutions. With over 30 years of experience, Hari focuses on KBR's energy transition and sustainable technology practices and strategies. And today, he's going to give us a peek into what exactly KBR is doing in terms of assisting clients worldwide to become sustainable. Welcome, Hari, and thank you for joining us here today. So, Hari, KBR has been, at the forefront of energy transition initiatives. So, what do you see as the key priorities in addressing energy transition and the journey towards net zero?
Great question. KBR has been looking at this for a very long time. If you look at the energy industry, there is energy consumed in several areas, and there you can break up into several areas. Basically, you're looking at power, which is used as electricity, mobility, and all of that, energy used in all those areas. Then you have what you use in materials, and then you have services. These are the three main areas which globally is what energy is consumed for, right? And we look at all of these three areas. And it's the same thing if you look at the World Energy Forum and everybody else, they're looking at the energy trilemma, which is it affordable? Is there security in the energy? And then is it sustainable? Right? So these are the three other aspects. So when you bring these together, KBR has been working on this for a long time in terms of improving the old technologies we had to reduce the carbon footprint, right? And then launching new technologies which support going towards net zero. And the third thing is improving the current operating units through services, bringing in our years of knowledge in the process area, along with the smarts of digital, AI, ML, to kind of improve the operation of these units.
Okay, all right. So, can you tell us about some key projects, that or strategies probably that KBR is currently implementing to drive this shift towards sustainable energy?
So there are several technologies we've introduced and improved. So let's look at the major one, right? The biggest thing that is impacting the energy transition is hydrogen. And to move around hydrogen, you need ammonia. So we've been working and we've launched the green ammonia and the blue ammonia. Green ammonia, probably about 10 units globally now we've sold, probably the largest anybody's done, and 3 here in India. And so green ammonia is an important aspect, but again, within the trilemma, the affordability is still not 100% on green. Whereas blue, with all the carbon credits and other stuff which you see in Europe as well as in US, there is a benefit in producing blue ammonia with sequestration and other things. Along with the carbon credits, you're able to provide it at a volume and at a price that is affordable. And to make that possible, we've also launched a technology which is for cracking ammonia back to hydrogen. And we have the first global project commercially starting up. And we also are starting up our own demo plant for this. So together, you will see that the entire supply chain for hydrogen is being addressed through ammonia, because you can't really transport hydrogen in large volumes globally. That's one. Then you can look at SAF, which is sustainable aviation fuel, which is another huge aspect which is being talked about globally, and we've launched an extremely differentiated technology which takes alcohol to jet. And the first project is being launched in the US, and that's another area which was going to impact. And then if you look at recycling, you also look at, you want to get circularity. Right? Was the other aspect you're looking at. So if you look at recycling, you have hydro PRT, which is again a very differentiated technology which we've launched. Three units will come online this year, and that'll be make a huge difference to some $750 billion of plastics is produced and $120 billion that goes to waste. Recycling that will make a big difference. So these are some aspects which I can kind of bring in front or show that has been brought in front to make a difference in this world. Yeah.
So you spoke about the aviation fuel, the sustainable aviation fuel. How has been the take-up? Because a lot of airline companies are actually looking at net zero being themselves. So how is the acceptance for this technology?
I think everybody, including the countries and aviation companies, are driving to reduce carbon footprint of their airlines. And there are several pathways to SAF. And there are things like HEFA, which is used cooking oil, but they have very limited application. So we are looking at large-scale applications that can be made by going from biofuels all the way to SAF. And that really is what I think will make a difference in the aviation industry in terms of volumes being consumed. And I think with SAF being launched from KBR with pure SAF, we think that will make a big difference. in that industry.
And you also spoke about plastics and recycling. So, you know, that's a major environmental challenge. I mean, we are faced here in India and elsewhere also. We have seen. So, can you tell us how you are addressing these challenges and the different approaches, probably, or technologies that you're using to address this issue?
Plastic recycling means you first got to get hold of the plastics, right? And that, I think, in many of the countries there are proper channels for doing that, and more so in the West than you would see in the East. Of course, in the East, if you go to Japan and Korea, they're well organized as well. So based on that, you'll actually see that UK has a project which is coming online, right? And then you have Korea, there's a project coming online. In Japan, there's a project coming online. The important thing is you get the plastics, you recycle them back to the base materials, but once you finish the plastic processing portion, then you need to use a refining or a petrochemical process to take it back to base chemical, which is also done by KBR. So we address the entire portfolio, and then also there is a cleanup and preparation of the plastic up front, which we call as material preparation plant. That's very, very important to keep feeding these units. So I think doing all of that brings the circularity really to a complete circle. And then we're also interfacing with the industry that actually does the work in collecting and sorting out plastics, because that's where your feed is going to come from. So people across the world are working on that, because you need to generate the feed to be able to give people incentive to bring back that plastic for recycling. Right? So you have to start working there, and then all the way, like I said, to the back end where the product is finally delivered.
Correct. And this particular thing, I think, is a big challenge in India: collecting and then separation, segregating. So that, do you think, is being addressed by the stakeholders, and or do you think there is work needs to be done in that area?
Very interesting question. And while we're discussing that question, I want to bring a few points, which would be really will bring to light why that feed is so important and why the technology is so important. More so, is that hydropurity, which is the KBR technology, is very forgiving to the feed. First of all, it takes a larger bandwidth of plastics, but it can also use plastics which are not all that clean, which means it's more forgiving because it uses water and it's not pyrolysis, it doesn't burn up and create ash. So that helps in a big way. And as I was mentioning, some of these large industrial houses have their own retail chains. These retail chains bring back a lot of plastic, which today is mechanically recycled, and there's a limit to how many times you can recycle them. If you put them through this, you get back the base chemicals and you can go back to plastic. So you're getting true circularity there. Plus, when you throw in the aspect that you have a material processing plant and it accepts material which is not, that doesn't have to be that quality in terms of feed, then you have a huge benefit in getting more items, more of the plastic recycled and more efficiently.
The environmental rules and everything, they have been evolving, and so how do you think these influence your strategies, and especially when it comes to energy transition and decarbonization?
I think policy plays an important role, because all of these technologies initially would need some kind of, like, for example, when I was talking about green ammonia, I told you it's not viable, because basically you got to get solar energy, you got to convert it into electricity, and then you convert that electricity into ammonia, and then you convert ammonia into hydrogen. There's so many conversions, you lose efficiency, and it's really not, it doesn't address the affordability piece. So in countries like the US and EU, they have carbon credit, they have the IRS, and they have the border balance, rules that have come in that really help industry to start looking at this seriously. And you'll see most of the projects addressing ammonia and hydrogen that are coming in these regions. Demand may be somewhere else in Japan, is driven by offtake from those places, but because of the existing policy in these countries, you'll see a lot of blue ammonia projects coming up in the US, because gas is cheap, and then you have the IRA, which helps you to make the product more efficiently and then sell it in a way in which you can make it affordable plus make some money in those projects. So when you put all of this together, you're giving an environment that really helps. So I would say that we have, like I mentioned earlier, we have sold 10 green ammonia plants. It will pick up as policy in other countries and around the world come to support that, or the cost of solar power comes down where the product becomes viable. And these are extremely important. And then the enactment of these, of how much of LCA will you accept as low carbon ammonia, or what will you accept as green, what will you accept as blue, these have been matured in these countries. And so I think that also helps. So there is a proper definition of which is what, and then you also have the support in terms of laws that help you to be efficient both in capex and opex to be able to have projects which will make sense.
So just to pick up from where you said that, how do you define LC? Now, different countries have different stages of growth, right? So do you think these blanket laws really help? Because there are some laws by EU where you're importing some. If you got to export something to EU, you have to pay a tax which goes to their fund. India is contesting that. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think that is it's a very okay. First of all, great point, because yes, different parts of the world are in different phases of a life cycle of growth. You can say from being a developed nation to a developing nation, and then their own economies have different challenges. So I do think each of these will finally evolve into a single global policy. At this point, they are looking at their own interests in terms of how do we manage our own security, energy security, how do we manage our affordability and then still be sustainable. And I think countries like India, we have an edge because we've gone ahead in some areas like solar and a huge installment of solar power and things like that in India, which helps, which I've seen some of the newer projects in India pushing for green, which they can do because they have solar power, which looks to be a little more affordable than elsewhere in the world. And then you have Japan and Korea who are setting their own standards and funding programs to be able to get, because they have to move away from coal and get to more affordable power. So each country is forming their policies based on what they need in the near term. But if you look at the midterm and the long term, I think these will converge eventually. And then the COP27, the COP28, these will bring those closer together as well.
Okay. So, last question. So, looking ahead, what's your vision for KBR's role in the global energy transition space in the next decade? And, how do you see the company, contributing to this cause?
Really, KBR has, in a way, been one of the first companies to look at sustainability in a holistic manner. As far as 2015, we said any technology that we launch or any work that we do needs to have a sustainability angle to it in terms of, does it check those boxes? Is it environmentally friendly? Is it going to make a difference to the world? I think that was some of the basic fundamental principles based on which the business has been built over the last 5-7 years. And so if you look at our business, we have the technology business, which talks about the process technologies. We have the consulting, who's talking about how do you make use of the assets best to have sustainable sources. And then you, like I said, you have the decades of building projects and commissioning projects and running projects along with the digital smarts of AI and ML put together, giving services to units, which helps you to lower your carbon footprint or run them more efficiently. Because you cannot really do everything net zero. You have to have incremental reduction in carbon footprint. That happens there. And then, of course, you go back to running these units, maintaining them. So the complete life cycle across, starting from consulting through technology, through your digital smarts and process knowledge, and the maintenance and operation of these units, we're playing a role in all of this. And when you add that we are playing in the sustainability zone in the business of energy, materials, and services, then you're really covering the complete spectrum of services that is required to build an industry that supports sustainability. So I think that's where KBR is going to make a big difference, and we think that's where our growth is.
Thank you, Hari, so much for speaking to us. It's good to know how KBR is planning to contribute to the sustainable goals, and we all require across the world. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.